graduate is you got the right attitude, you win.
I think so.
You got the confidence.
Yep. I'll do a brief introduction. Steve Harder, he spoke with the team last year, but a lot of new guys, so, graduate '84, the only football and wrestling All-American, big supporter of the program, Mount Union, bleeds purple, so we appreciate having Steve Harder in today.
Well, guys, how many of you guys were in the room last year when I talked? Okay, well, you guys are gonna have to put a little bit of the boring shit that, you know, I introduced myself.
They don't remember it anyhow, they hit their heads.
That's true. Anyway, I'm from, anybody from Carrollton? Yeah, you don't count, Sean. He used to be the referee when I was wrestling. I mean, talk about a guy that gets 2 points in my own street. But, I grew up in Carrollton, you know, dirt poor, first generation kid for college. I was a vocational kid, wasn't taking college prep. You know, running water in our house was a luxury. My dad decided in the '80s that trapping animals might be good way to make a living. In the '80s, you couldn't do it, trust me. And my mother was a short order cook and worked in the side of pottery before it got closed down. So, you know, real humble roots. But I always loved athletics. I got involved in a novice tournament that Carrollton throws when I was 9 years old. And I won the novice tournament. My first wrestling match lasted 4 seconds. I tackled the kid. And I said, man, I like this. It's a pretty cool sport. So I came through mostly as a football player. I wrestled in the off season. I didn't get into retro tournaments or freestyle tournaments or anything else. And when football was over, I jumped into wrestling. Coach Montgomery was my wrestling coach here in Mount. But you know, the main thing I want to talk about today is mentoring. Okay, and why is mentoring important, and why did I start this program in Mount Union to help with mentoring? So what I found is when I came out of school, I was a first generation college kid. Nobody in my family had ever got into college education. I really didn't know what to expect. I knew I was supposed to wear a suit, but my suits didn't fit very well. You know, kind of looked, you know, not appropriate sometimes. I didn't really know what accountants did. You know, I just kind of studied accounting in college, but I really didn't understand what they did in real life. And there was a struggle, a little bit of a struggle going between. And a guy who kind of took me under his wing was a guy who played linebacker at Howard University, African American man. And he really worked with me on how to write. And he's now running the NFL assurance programs to make sure all NFL teams comply with the NFL rules, which is a pretty cool job to have. So he's, you know, so I see him from time to time when he's at Houston. He's spoken to some of my teams because I coach football, you know, for my kids over the past 20 years. So he was kind of my first mentor out of college that said, hey, you know, you got some really good talent, you just don't know how to do this, this, and this. And he really helped me with, you know, how do I develop as a public accountant and become successful at that. And I became successful at it, and I got very good at it. And I did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Anybody know what mergers and acquisitions is? When you buy other companies, so that's mergers and acquisitions. So I was buying other companies, or I was doing the accounting, or making sure the accounting was correct for public companies who were buying other companies. So it's pretty interesting stuff, you know. And so I did that at Arthur Anderson, and then I started doing it for a public company. I really enjoyed working with entrepreneurs, and so I was buying companies for this company, and then probably I was 29, and me and the chairman of that company decided it's probably best that I go do something else, not because I wasn't successful, but because they had decided not to allow me to run $350 million business, they decided to go with an older guy, and the older guy didn't want the young guy around to interfere with what he was doing. So I started Notre Capital Management, Notre Capital Ventures, which is the company that I've had for the last 30 years. And so when I was at this company always, I had some really good mentors about how to be an entrepreneur, how to buy companies, how people think. Got a lot of great training. People took me under their wing, option guys, and it really taught me, how to be a businessman. And so when I started my company with another guy, his name was Mike Baker, it was my work ethic and it was his reputation, and he was kind of the mentor. If I had a question, he answered the questions, but I was the guy really making all the stuff happen. And, I always tell people it's a good thing it was not my reputation and his work ethic, because he had none. And we'd have been an absolute disaster, but I worked hard, and because of my work ethic and what people saw, they were willing to invest money in it, right? So, now I had investors, and so, I start the business. 1 year later, I take my first company public on the New York Stock Exchange, and I get stock worth $5 million, so that was a pretty good year. And I keep doing this, and I end up doing this 8 times over a period of 5 years. I've taken more companies public than anybody in the history of the New York Stock Exchange as the founder, even to this day. So that's another accolade, along with, like football player, wrestler, All-American, and also academic All-American. So you gotta get all 3 of those if you want to compete with me, okay? But obviously, I've always been a very competitive person. So did that 8 times. I'm 35 years old. I'm worth $100 million on paper. Okay, so that's a pretty quick ride from Steve Harder, 18-year-old kid with nothing, coming out of vocational school, to 35-year-old man with that kind of net worth. So I learned a lot, but I know I had the right people with me at every turn, right? So I've always tried to be a good mentor, and I've done mentoring programs. We've mentored a 5th Ward, which is the worst area of Houston, Texas. We took a middle school that was supposed to be shut down. We put a mentoring program in, and we took it from the worst school to one of the top 12 schools in the district in a period of 5 years.